There's a really interesting debate between DeSantis and Newsom. Unusual because unless they're going directly against each other in an election, Democrats and Republicans don't normally have these head-to-head debates. What's underlying that? Is there something we should be reading into it?
Yeah, I think in many ways it came up through the cable TV culture of, basically from Fox News, where Gavin Newsom had quite deliberately agreed to be interviewed quite often on Fox, especially with Sean Hannity. And that was an indicator that he was really running for office. He's a shadow candidate for Joe Biden's seat, preparing in case, something happens to Biden or he changes his mind or whatever happens. So he started reaching out to Fox, sometime in the last year and doing relatively frequent interviews. And then, of course, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, of course he's interviewing on Fox constantly. He's running for the nomination more officially than Gavin Newsom. But they are, considered the future leaders of their respective parties. And 75%, as you know, Jacob, 75% of Americans don't want to see a Trump versus Biden rematch. So this is really almost the people's choice or preference of looking ahead to the next generation, whether that means next year, 2024, or at the very least 2028.
But it looks unlikely for next year that Governor DeSantis seems to have fallen back in the polls.
Yeah.
Biden seems determined to carry on. So it's an interesting shadow boxing match.
It really is. And I think, what's happened is Governor DeSantis was polling very well a few months ago. And so I think when the early stages of our conversations about having this debate occurred, he was polling much higher. But really the biggest movement has been, and we've discussed this on your show, in April, when the first indictment came out, the Alvin Bragg indictment, which was probably the most shameless of the indictments, DeSantis was only down 15 to President Trump, which is a small margin given how early it was and the early stages of the primary process. So down 15, and then you had the Alvin Bragg indictment and 3 subsequent indictments, plus the famous mugshot. Trump has gone straight up, and most of that support has come from DeSantis. So it's not as much of a story about Governor DeSantis's campaign or any missteps. I mean, of course, all candidates have missteps, but this is really dramatically, quite obvious if you look at the chart from the Alvin Bragg indictment or the indications a few weeks earlier that it was coming. Trump has gone straight up.
And